Hello guys, welcome back to my channel, where I help you learn about defense, international relations, and political science topics. Now, in my last video, I basically shared with you guys about the beginning of strategic studies. We covered Clausewitz, Napoleon, the First World War, and the transformations of the modern war. But what about what happens after the Second World War? What do we do with all those new types of weapons? And what were the strategies during the Cold War? This will be the main focus on this video, so stick around because we will look at deterrence theory, the doctrine of massive retaliation, Kennedy's flexible response, and strategic stability. So first, I want to introduce deterrence theory to you. Deterrence theory is about developing actions that could avoid consequences that a certain actor cannot deal with in the future. The first thing to understand about deterrence is that we have two types of it. We have the deterrence of denial and the deterrence of punishment. Deterrence by denial happens when you try to prevent your opponent from taking an offensive action by threatening to take a measure that will prevent him from enjoying the expected benefit of invading a certain territory or taking a certain location or taking an offensive action, whatever it is. That's when we try to convince the enemy not to attack by showing him that whenever he attacks, you will take a measure that will frustrate the strategic objective he seeks to achieve with that attack. Deterrence by denial is when you try to convince an actor not to take a certain offensive initiative, whether it's appropriating land or invading a country, through a measure that will deny him what he wants to achieve from the moment he plans the invasion. Deterrence by punishment is when we impose another random cost, but the imposed cost is greater than the benefit that the other actor will acquire. It is the idea of imposing a punishment and expecting it to be greater than the benefit the other would receive. These two elements are present in the idea of deterrence and guide the evolution of American grand strategy throughout the Cold War. At first, to give a little bit of context, at the end of the Truman administration and during the Eisenhower administration, we had the issue that only the Americans had a lot of nuclear weapons. The opponents didn't have the ballistic capability to hit American territory directly. So the framework of operations of the nuclear conflict takes place fundamentally in Europe at that time. It has no missile system sophisticated enough to launch a missile and hit Washington without the Americans being able to neutralize it. In the Eisenhower government, we have a doctrine of deterrence, which is the doctrine of massive retaliation. It's the idea that, given that 1. You are invulnerable at the time, and 2. Given that you have a nuclear capability far superior to any other opponent, you can, for example, threaten the Soviets that any political interference in the countries on the Western sphere can be responded to with massive retaliation with a disproportionate use of force. That's why the doctrine that marked the Eisenhower government was given the name of massive retaliation. In the Kennedy administration, we have a very different situation for two reasons. The first is that in the early 60s, there were several countries carrying out nuclear tests. The second element is that Cuba changes the U.S. risk calculation. The possibility of placing missiles in Cuba generated by the change in the regime that the country went through, which led Fidel Castro to ally with the Soviet Union, raises the expectation of a military base that is not far from the United States. This not only changes how much Americans feel threatened by the whole scenario, but it also alters the force calculation in which they are embedded. The Soviets came much closer, from the point of view that they produced more armaments and that they now had a strategically well-positioned ally. So Kennedy changes a little bit the way he handles this kind of circumstance, because he changes the idea of massive retaliation to an idea of flexible response, where you don't clearly anticipate how you're going to respond to a certain type of threat. You deal with the threats case by case and begins testing the possibility of using nuclear technology in conventional warfare devices. They sought to diversify the use of this technology to try to give it another functionality. During the Kennedy administration, the other actors started to gain in attack capacity. There is a moment between this consolidation of what we call mutually assured destruction, which is a moment of great ambiguity. There is a great influence of game theory in which the analysis model of the actors of interaction between countries is supported by game theory. From the point of view of this theory, as early as the 60s, Americans clearly had a nuclear capability to destroy the entire world and had enough technology to impose a destruction that would wipe out every country in the world. The Soviet Union had a nuclear capability very close to that, and it continues to increase that nuclear capability. From a game theory perspective, what is the most rational strategy? Was it attacking first or not attacking first? At some point in the Cold War, not attacking means waiting for the moment the enemy needs to launch an attack against you. So we have a moment of the Cold War that is extremely fragile. What we call first strike capability is the idea that you have enough military capability that if you attack first, you can destroy the enemy. But if the enemy attacks first, he can destroy you. The second attack capacity is when we have enough offensive potential to undertake an attack, but the opponents we are fighting with have enough defensive capacity not to be decimated in the first attack. That is, they can retaliate. And when they retaliate, they will cause damage that you are unable to accept. It is from the moment that we have a set of powers with simultaneous first and second attack capability that we have strategic stability. So we are talking about how Americans have changed their approach to the use of the nuclear capability they have at their disposal. Strategy development is more about preventing use than encouraging use. During the 50s, during the Eisenhower government, it was easier for the Americans to use the privilege of having a superior nuclear capability to impose their positions on the European chessboard, because the setting was European and no one was able to offer a real threat to the USA. In the Kennedy government, we have a significant change with Cuba's entry into the communist bloc, where Cuba places a base close enough to the Americans to target them. And we have China developing nuclear capability and the Soviets increasing their weapons. So this makes the Kennedy administration start trying to develop new alternatives for the use of this technology. So the Kennedy administration is in an ambiguous position. It doesn't know exactly how it's going to respond to every threat that presents itself before it. Also because for the Kennedy administration, the major conflicts that are presented are irregular conflicts. From this, we have a dilemma. From the moment we left this Kennedy administration, we have a dilemma characterized by the scenario where, when we reach a point where we have the capacity for destruction, but we are afraid that others will reach a capacity for destruction equal to yours, we start to generate a configuration where the incentive to attack is very significant. What neutralizes this incentive to attack is the combination of first attack and second attack. That's all. If you like this video, then don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Also, next week's video is about Graham's foreign policy models. If you don't want to miss it, then hit the notification bell. Until next time, thanks for watching.